kung fu cowboy, tennis shoes on my feet. I'm a kung fu cowboy.
Kung Fu Cowboy here, the Kung Fu Cowboy podcast. Should I always say that? Anyway, we're at the last one. I thought I should read this one, okay? We're in that list of, what's the top heading here? Who is Kung Fu Cowboy and why does Kung Fu Cowboy make music? So, hopefully we've answered those questions now. Well, I'm noticing on the side here, there's a couple things I added. To inspire people, to create emotions. Well, hopefully, better. I guess they're sometimes sad, maybe sometimes angry. And to teach philosophy. That's one thing that I don't think anybody else is doing because there's not many people who actually are philosophical in nature or abilities or temperament or knowledge to be able to do so. I've been a philosopher my whole life. And a serious philosopher since 1984, I would say. When I started at UCLA and I had to pass by the UCLA bookstore, I'd always go in there and pick up a book, at least one book a week. And I would go in there and get all kinds of books on Buddhism and different things, and I could recommend some really cool books. But anyway, so why does Kung Fu Cowboy make music? Number 8, the last one on our list here. I'll read it. I like this answer. To fulfill the poetic dreams of Jim Morrison and the artistic ambitions of I think I got this backwards. It says artistic ambitions of George Harrison, but it should be the artistic ambitions of John Lennon and the spiritual goals of George Harrison. I don't know how I got those names in the wrong places. I think they should be reversed from what I wrote on the sheet. But yes, so to fulfill the poetic dreams of Jim Morrison. What does that mean? Jim Morrison wanted to be a poet. In fact, he quit music. He hated being a musician. He hated being a rock star. He hated it. I mean, not even disliked it. He hated it. I've watched many documentaries. I don't know if there's anything left that I haven't seen unless they make a new something. I've seen them all. The Last Day, The Last 24 Hours, and the story of all these things and different people. I've got a thorough understanding of Jim Morrison, thorough understanding. And I can even tell you more stories that I know from in the insiders. But anyway, point being is he wanted to be a poet, and I admired him. He inspired me to be a poet. And he didn't fulfill his ambitions of a poet. So I felt an obligation to satisfy, since he inspired me, to make him proud of me would be to fulfill his ambitions in my life. So I've always wanted to be a famous, acclaimed poet. 70 years old. It hasn't happened yet. I'm pumping out the books, but I'm not getting compliments or getting any accolades or awards or anything. I've even submitted a couple of them for book awards. Got honorary mentions, but I think they do that I think those are consolation prizes. Maybe I give one of those to everybody. I'm not sure. They used to only give like one. It used to be like 4th place was an honorable mention, or maybe honorable mention might have a 2 or 3 or something. People they thought deserved an award, but they just couldn't fit them in the top 3. So an honorary mention used to mean something. But I suspect, because now we're in the world of the millennials, they give away prizes for everybody just for showing up to school. Come on school. It doesn't matter if you're sick and you make us all sick. You get an award for showing up every day and making us all sick. Oh, the principals used to get every principal of every school got mad at me because when my kids were sick, I kept them home. Well, if we don't have a doctor's excuse, then you should bring them in. I'm not going to take them to a doctor. They're sick. There's no sense in wasting their time and doing that. And they're sick. I'm not bringing them in until they're healthy. And so that used to piss off the instructors. And the reason it pissed them off is not because they actually cared about my student or my kids. It's because they got grants. They got money based on the attendance of the students. So they wanted the sick kids to show up so they could get more money from the students, from these different grants that were available from the government. And seriously, that's it. The kids were just showing up sick for money. And it's not that I think public schools is bad, but it could definitely be improved. And the way they're doing it in Florida right now is not good. Critical race theory complaints and all this stupid stuff they're saying. What a bunch of slave owners, man. I think that's what I'm going to call all these people who are basically, they don't believe in people's rights and they censorship, and they're into censorship and stuff. They're all slave owners. Maybe that's a good term for them now. I got the song for them. I call the slave, what I do is I call the Supreme Court slave owners. That's what I say about them. I call them slave owners. That's why they changed that Roe versus Wade, because they want those women to keep pumping out babies. The last line of it is, of the song is they will protect the eggs inside of you. That's what the Supreme Court's trying to do. They're protecting the eggs inside of all America's women, because those eggs are valuable to the government. Sorry, that just sounds rotten, but that's the truth. That's it in a nutshell. So anyway, let's break this down real quick. To fulfill the poetic dreams of Jim Morrison. He did publish a book or two, and he may have been happy and satisfied with that, but I have gotten so much farther than him. I've got a dozen poetry books. I mean, my poetry, and plus my poetry is better than him. Sorry to say. I mean, he's got some poems I like, seriously, he is a poet, but man, I have written hundreds of poems more than him, so my ability is better than him. Plus, I've had a wider life than him. He had a horrible life. He didn't like what he was doing, and it was in a very narrow, cramped thing where everybody was trying to get him to do something. He didn't have the freedom and the diversity that I have of changing all these careers, going from carpenter to recording engineer to record producer to performer to studio designer to session player to photographer to making movies as a lighting director, as a cameraman, as a gaffer, as a grip, as an electrician. And then learning Kung Fu, Shaolin Kung Fu. He never learned Shaolin Kung Fu. He never learned to teach. He never learned to improve people's lives. All these things that I've done that he didn't do. So I have all these experiences that, of course, with my poetry, I have more to express. And anyway, so I think that I have already fulfilled the poetic dreams of Jim Morrison, even if nobody knows it. I think if Jim Morrison could see me and see all my books and check them out, I think he would just hug me. Okay. Artistic ambitions of John Lennon. John Lennon he's amazing in that he's created some amazing songs. But the fact he had so much trouble writing and he didn't write that many songs, I don't want to question whether he has a musician soul. I want to believe he has a musician soul because he was so compelled to always keep doing the music. So he's got a musician soul. It just may not be in the top position because there's three souls and they're stacked on top of each other. So I think that he had the woman soul on the top, which is why he was a wife beater and emotional and a drug addict and an alcoholic and all these other things, is because the woman soul is about whatever you want. If it feels right, if you want to do it, if you enjoy it, see, then those are the ambitions of the woman's soul. The worker soul, was it profitable? Is it going to pay off? Is it going to be okay? Is everything going to am I going to be able to pay all my bills? That kind of thing. That's the worker soul. The manager soul. Is all this stuff going to raise a profit? What's the shipping, the importing, the supplies, the resources, the marketing? Bigger perspective on life that you don't want to have unless you really have that soul, because it's a nightmare. It's not really. Well, it's a nightmare when you don't have people working for you and you don't have any money. I got all those ambitions, but they're kind of, like I said, they're kind of futile. Kind of like, okay, anyway, and then what do we got? We got, so John Lennon, anyway, he inspired, because some of the songs he wrote, like I love I Am the Walrus, even the songs he writes, because he was such a, but okay, let's see. And then the spiritual ambitions of George Harrison. Gosh, him and I could have been the best friends. I wish him and I could have connected somehow in our lifetime, because I'm so much more spiritually oriented than him. And I actually got into the Hare Krishna, and I actually wrote a book on Krishna. Super Soul 13 is a breakdown of the Hare Krishna religion, the Bhagavad Gita mainly, and it's amazing, very inspirational. I think George Harrison would have liked the way I kind of brought that religion into the modern world, took out a lot of the terminology which a lot of Americans and Christians would find offensive or panic, and made it so it was digestible and usable. So I think I've satisfied the ambitions of Jim Morrison, George Harrison, and I'm sure that John Lennon would love a lot of my songs. Maybe like all my songs, but I'm sure he'd like a lot of them. And I think some of them might even sound like him. In fact, Flash, the singer of that group who did this on Love, I can't sing like him. He's got a raspy voice. That's why he's famous. He does that song, Love Hurts. Love Hurts. And he's got that raspy voice. And for some reason, that makes him famous. That's why I say my pure voice doesn't do me as much benefit as having a distorted voice like Rod Stewart. But anyway, he used to say, I'm the next John Lennon. When he heard me and my songs and stuff, he says, you're John Lennon. You're reincarnated John Lennon. You're John Lennon. You're the spirit. You're the next. He used to always refer to me as John Lennon. I don't know why, but I do know why. But but that's who he used to always introduce me. Oh, this guy, he's great. He's like John Lennon, you know. And so anyway, he was cool. We used to jam a lot together and play at a nightclub that was near my house, an Irish bar. And they had a stage, and it had drums and an amplifier. It might have even had a bass up there. It had a bass. It had the amp. I don't know if it had a guitar. Yeah, I think you might have probably had to bring your own guitar. But I'd bring my flute, and then I'd sometimes play the bass, and sometimes I'd even play the drums. And then and he would sing, and some other people, and these traveling musicians would come through there. Somehow they knew about this place, and get these tour musicians to come through. Amazing. There was this one drummer who used to stop in there whenever he used to cycle around the United States and come back. And this one black drummer, I don't know his name, and I don't know if I wrote it down, but I used to listen to him and think, man, that's why I don't want to ever be a drummer, because I don't think I'd ever be as good as that guy. He was just so awesome. But anyway, why do I play music? Because I love to play music. And listen to my story. You can tell that I've always filled it in. Even when I didn't have a band, I was going to bars to play or jam and recording all the time and writing and working as a solo artist. And even when I was a solo artist, I'd sometimes have a band and I'd do session work. So music is just me. I am music. In fact, it's almost a curse. I've always wondered if I should tell anybody this. I'll tell you. Whenever I hear the shower, when I turn on the shower and a lot of other sounds, they create what's called noise. And noise is basically all frequencies at the same time. Now there's pink noise and white noise, and they kind of differ in terms of the frequencies. The pink noise has more of the dark stuff. It sounds more like the ocean. And then the white noise just seems to be more of the higher end. So, but both of them are noise, but they're just kind of different frequencies all mashed together. So it's noise. It's chaos. Cacophony, I think is another word for it. But anyway, when I hear noise, I hear music. It used to annoy me, but I just accept it now. So when the shower's going, within all those frequencies, I can hear songs. I'm getting a little choked up. It's true. I could hear music and noise. I thought it was a curse, but sorry. That's my life. Music. I transform everything into music, and I hear music. And when I hear noise, I hear music. That's who I am. I don't know why that choked me up. I guess because I never told anybody that before. Anyway. Kung Fu Cowboy out of here with a tear in my eye.